All stories shared on this podcast are based on true events, but names and details have been altered to protect the privacy of those involved. This content is for entertainment and educational purposes only and does not constitute financial advice.
Welcome to Closing Time with the Lone Rangers. Today, I'm actually riding solo without my regular co-host, but this is Closing Time with the Lone Rangers, the podcast where closing chaos becomes great conversation. Today, I've got my longtime friend and one of the most interesting guys in the mortgage world with me, David Searle. Now, Dave has done a little bit of everything. He's worked in print media sales. He's been a podcast host for what was at the time the #1 Pacers podcast in the world, I'm pretty sure. He even toured the country and the world as the stage manager, the road manager for the Big Damn Band. These days, he's one of our best loan officers on the Steadfast Mortgage team, and he's one of the best when it comes to helping out first-time home buyers understand the process without freaking out. Dave, welcome to Closing Time with just one Lone Ranger today. How are you doing today?
I think that one of the keys to success and any sort of entertainment is not to build up expectations and hype too high. But I feel like you set the bar up pretty high. I think you said one of the most interesting people in mortgages total, which is quite a thing to have to follow with my own true life experience. But I will do my best.
Well, I mean that. I've been in mortgages for quite some time. I know a lot of people, and you're not just one of the most interesting men in mortgages. I think you're one of the most interesting people I know. So I'm excited to have you on the podcast today. So thanks so much for joining us.
Yeah, I appreciate that. It's quite the red carpet. Appreciate it.
I mean, I really truly don't know very many people in my life with sort of your, wide array of experiences. So you were a tour manager for one of the most cool, interesting, eclectic bands, imaginable, right? The Big Damn Band. What's one wild memory from life on the road that, sort of still makes you laugh or cringe?
Man, there's a lot of them. And sometimes I feel like I should spend more time maybe sitting down and writing down some of these experiences. And, the band itself actually has a podcast sort of explaining all of the wild and crazy stuff that they're into. I have to just maybe think of one that pops to mind. We're about to do the Warped Tour. And when you do the Warped Tour, of course, we wanted a tour bus. We didn't want to spend a tremendous amount of money on a typical tour bus rental. And so we found a company that basically took RVs and really spruced them up and converted them into true, tour vans or, tour buses. And they were 1 inch short of the regulation that would make you have to have a CDL to drive it. So anybody could drive it, right? So
nice.
They did that and they ended up hiring a friend to spend the summer driving this thing. So they didn't have to have a professional driver and put them in hotels and all that sort of stuff. Well, one of the problems with doing that is she was really uncomfortable with emptying the bathroom. When you fill one of those things up at a gas station, you go into the truck stop area. You've got 2 pumps on either side, the little butterfly pumps, and then you can connect a hose into a tank and empty out. So she was just very uncomfortable with doing that. And so we kind of showed her how to do it and said, this is, part of the driving responsibilities. And so she said, right. Okay. So we drive from Indianapolis. It's kicking off in LA, and the record label had a party at their headquarters to kind of kick off the Warped Tour. So every band that was on that label came out and had a little barbecue. And this the label headquarters was just a few blocks away from the strip on Hollywood that has all the stars, right? So yes. It's right in the thick of downtown LA,
right?
And so we pull up with this bus and we're park outside. Well, she hadn't been emptying the tank is really what happened. She said she'd been doing it. hadn't been doing it. And of course we have several days of, our business
Sure.
and the tour. So we're in the back, behind the building, they're setting up the barbecue, and we notice a smell, and you could just smell what you can imagine you would smell
Yes.
wafting off of this thing. And so we thought, well, we can't do this. I mean, it's not only is that gross in general, but we're about to all eat food. You can't have that happening. So we're trying to figure out, well, what the heck are we going to do? Like, well, we can't drive to like a Love's. There's no Love's in downtown LA. I mean, like, it would take forever to go out and get something like that. So we consider our options, and I say, all right, I'm taking care of this. All right, I got this. I go in,
You're the manager.
turn on.
That's what you do.
I'm the manager. That's what you got to do. This is part of being a tour manager, right? So turn on the bus, and I back it up about half a block where there is two things. One, a little bit of an overpass, and two, there's a sewer drain. And so right in the middle, the thick of it in Hollywood, cars, pedestrians everywhere. There's not a lot of pedestrians in LA. I have this bus parked under illegally parked under an underpass, flashers on, and then I'm dumping, just freestyle dumping the tank into a drain on the street. And they're like, well, what if the police stop us? I'm like, well, I mean, it's either that or smell up the whole barbecue. What do you want to do? And so then that's flipped it on and got it all out. And so it's a little mini Dave Matthews Band, but fortunately there was nobody. We were under the underpass, not over the overpass. So, that obviously makes it a little bit better. So that was pretty crazy, I would say. That's one of thousands, but for some reason that was, I just went to the bathroom right before we started. I think maybe that's what made it top of mind.
Man. So did she do a better job of doing that part of her job from there on out? Did that sort of jog
kind
your
of
memory,
kind of. Well, I mean, but the main thing was what we started getting to a rhythm was, you would drive from, you get to the Warped Tour at like 6 a.m. right, and then you do stuff all day, and you were outside of an amphitheater or a sports arena or whatever, and then you would pack up and leave at about 10, 11 at night, and then you drive overnight to the next place. So she'd sleep during the day and drive at night, and then we would be the opposite. And so we would generally just try as much as possible to use the restroom like on the actual grounds instead of, and just not use the RV, which I think a lot of bands did too. It just made sense at that point. It was really all about when there's a long drive that made sense, but we just stuck to the porta potties at that point.
Yeah. All right. So before we get into mortgages, do you have any latent thoughts on what had been probably the best Pacers season of our life until it ended with such a horrific game 7, with the injury to my son's favorite player and probably my favorite Pacer player since, Jalen Rose and Reggie Miller and that whole group.
Oh, but the season was, I mean, it was amazing. It was magical. My son and I actually did a little piece for the local news. That a reporter had reached out and know that, with you and your son, my son and I, we went to game 3 of the finals. I, had never been to a finals game at all. I certainly had never been to a finals game where the Pacers played. That was an incredible experience. And so we did a little interview about that. And one of the things that I talked about that made it into the story was, they were the 4 seed. They'd won 51 games. It wasn't really expected of them to go that deep in the playoffs, and they had a good second half, but it made it a lot more magical to go through this experience when they didn't have the weight of expectations. Unlike your intro to this podcast, the Pacers were able to go in there hoping, if they played Cleveland to 7 games in the second round, that would be a pretty good season. I mean, maybe a little disappointing, but the fact that they were able to get all the way to a halftime lead in Game 7 of the NBA Finals was not expected. And that's just a different experience. It is one of the better experiences in sports. Unfortunately, with pro sports, a lot of times there's so much money on the line. And they're at such a high level that you don't often see too many things that are wildly beyond your expectations. And especially in basketball, where they play 82 games in the regular season, then you have the playoffs, where there's 7 games per of series. They kind of squeeze out a lot of the luck and a lot of the random chance, and they really make sure that the teams that are winning in the playoffs are the ones that deserve it the most. And so just that kind of run doesn't happen all that often. And so that just made it a lot sweeter. And that's what made me obsessed with the Pacers in the first place, I think, is those kind of runs with Reggie Miller and not just having a team consistently exceed their expectations, but also do so with game-winning shots and all these crazy moments. It was a little strange how similar this was to those 90s runs, but it was just really cool to be able to share that feeling that I had as a kid watching a very improbable and memorable Pacers team kind of get recreated in the modern day. It was really cool. It was a really fun bonding experience, and it was just, I would have really liked to have won the title, but I wouldn't trade that experience to the world. That was an amazing season, and arguably the best Pacers season there's ever been. I think that there's a good argument for that. So it was amazing. I was glad we got to do it.
For sure. So it's interesting. So I got to know Dave before I met Dave. I got to know you by listening to you on the Miller Time podcast. And I think our listeners can probably just tell, even from listening to you answer those first 2 questions, you're such a good storyteller, right? You have a way of talking through things in a way that is interesting, in a way that is engaging, but also in a way that sort of puts people at ease. And, as we got to know each other, we, a while ago, we were, sort of loosely connected to the same, website. And then we got to know each other. You were in sales. I was in mortgages. And, we sort of started kind of circling each other like, Dave, yeah, have you ever thought about getting into mortgages? You were thinking about kind of transitioning from selling print media and certain things to maybe getting into a different career. What is it about this business, the mortgage business, that sort of stuck for you? And what is it that you found from your past life in sales that has been helpful for you in this business?
A couple things. One thing that was really intriguing to me is that, and by the way, I was still in advertising, and you were starting up your branch as a broker, and so I had to dig into your business and figure out how it worked, and what competitive advantages that you had in order to help you advertise it more effectively. And I'll be honest with you, especially when you're talking about the advantage of being a broker, I was kind of thinking, well, there's maybe more to it, or maybe he's kind of framing it in a certain way. But no, it's the more we talked about it and the more that I learned about it, understanding that there is a sincere rate and price advantage to it. As long as you can solve the puzzle of, closing loans effectively, then, I want to save a lot of money, and it made a lot of sense to me because there's a lot of industries where you say, well, one company's pumping a tremendous amount of money into advertising, and one industry is just doing it at the lowest price. We talked about analogies on how to compare this, and the Costco to Whole Foods or example I think is really good. Sure. It's like whatever you think of Whole Foods. So I'm a big fan. I'm not doing any disrespect to it, but they're obviously charging kind of a premium for what they have, and then Costco. I think I love Costco, and they're providing extremely high quality products at incredibly low prices because they do it in a very smart way. And I think that's a really great way to explain brokers. So one element of it was just being able to just have that advantage. In sales, if you have a big advantage over everybody else, that's the goal. That's what you want, but also just being able to bring that to people, because individual people, I didn't know that. And I feel like most people don't know that. And if I was buying a house, I'd certainly want somebody coming to me and saying, I can give you exactly what you need, which is a mortgage on your house, and save you a tremendous amount of money and give you the same level of service than anybody else and all that. So, but also, I was dealing with a lot of business owners and a lot of marketing people within businesses. And some of them were very lovely people that became friends of mine. And sometimes, when you have a conversation about business, sometimes it's different. Sometimes people just pretend to be someone that they're not. and they take on a certain attitude that they don't actually have, that they wouldn't talk to somebody at a party in the same way that they talk to someone in a business meeting. A sense of, you could call it entitlement in some ways, and then you can also call it just sort of acting like you are in a high stakes Wall Street movie rather than two people in the Midwest just trying to make a business succeed and make money for the people that work for you. And so there was kind of that mixed sort of personality to deal with people. And it's just completely flipped on its head when you're talking about homeowners, especially first-time home buyers. Most first-time home buyers don't know a lot about mortgages, and they shouldn't. Like it's an enormous purchase and it's extremely important, but they're also only going to do it once.
Right.
And this is going to be like a month of their lives, and then they're not really going to need to know most of this stuff ever again. And so they should be able to go to an expert, pay that expert to give them their expertise and give them the best options possible. That's the whole point. That's why you make money, right? Mm-hmm. And so being able to deal with individual couples who are so excited about buying a house, who are so excited about maybe building a family. And there's lots of people that buy houses, and there's a lot of some of the best people I've worked with are very young people in their early 20s who are making they're not rich, they don't have extravagant jobs, but they're just, I'm going to be here for a while, so I'm going to purchase a home right now, and then when I have a chance to really move and get married and make that next step in my life, I have all this equity in this house. It's going to make it a lot easier. I love working with those kids. They're always so impressive to me. But just talking with individual people and just talking to them like real people.
Yeah.
And like you said, maybe I might be disarming or good at talking with first-time home buyers. I just talk to them like I'm talking to you right now. I mean, you don't have to put on airs. You don't have to pretend to be a big financial expert. People sometimes will ask me like, what's going to happen with rates tomorrow? And I'll say, I don't know. Like, who knows? Like, nobody knows. Like, I think literally nobody on earth knows exactly what will happen. Even people who are investing, if they knew that they were going to invest more tomorrow, they'd invest more today, right? Like, that it doesn't happen until it happens, and it's okay to say I'm not an expert on that, but I can help you navigate that in a really great way. So, I think just being able to help people who genuinely appreciate that help and spend every day connecting with other people like human beings, and then genuinely saving them money on the biggest purchase of their life. That's what appeals to me the most.
Awesome. Yeah, I think I talk to borrowers a lot, and sometimes they'll ask me a question and they'll say something like, I'm sorry, this is probably a stupid question, but and then they'll ask me a question, and I'll often tell them like, look, there's no such thing as a stupid question, especially in this industry. Even the people that have bought a lot of houses, right? What does that mean? They've bought 4 houses. They've bought 6 houses. Right. As a loan officer, we've helped how many more people than that? Right? Someone that's bought a lot of houses, they've bought 4 houses, 5 houses over the course of 20, 30 years. And how much have loan regulations changed over the course of that time? They're going to have a lot of questions. So it's our job to educate them. It's our job to put them at ease. I think you're really, really good at that. I'm so pumped that you're on the Steadfast Mortgage team. All right. So now time for my favorite part of every episode. Time for story time with Dave. All right. So before we get into it, quick reminder for our listeners. All the stories that Dave tells today are 100% real. Of course, we want to maintain compliance. Any names, details, dates will be changed to protect the innocent and the not so innocent. So the story is based on real and actual events, but we may be using fictional names like Buck Rollins, Deputy Doc Draws, things like that, just to keep things fun and compliant. So Dave, take us to the wild west of loan closings and share with us 1 or 2 stories from your loan closing past.
Sure. So, the first story I was, I actually alluded to this. This was a person that was buying a house solo, someone that was young, the same scenario I was just talking about, and was very happy to help her kind of navigate that situation and figure it out. And so, part of the process of buying a home is pre-approval. And, we take a look at a person's income, how much money they have saved for a down payment, their credit, and all of that. And then we give them authority to put in an offer at a certain range. And of course, someone might be well qualified to buy a house at $250,000, but not $425,000. So you got to figure out that range too. So when in speaking to her, she gave me a price range of the houses that she was looking at. And based on that, based on her income, and based on the current rates, she was good to go. But I wanted to give her a word of caution, which was, if you want to increase the price range that you're looking at, then it starts to get a little shaky. So talk to me first. Also, if rates go up, it starts to get a little shaky, and I will tell you about that while you're shopping. Also, during the pre-approval process, I like to try to ask as many questions as possible about things that might be changing to make sure that we're not surprised later. And so one of the questions was, about her income. And she was making an hourly wage, and she told me, I'm going to get a raise. I said, okay, great. And when's that going to happen? It's about a week before closing. I'm like, oh, cool. That's awesome. Okay. Right. So how much is that? And she said, it's going to be between this and that. I'm like, oh, between, so you don't know yet? I'm like, yeah, it's definitely happening. It's happening on that date. But my manager's going to tell me they just haven't determined exactly how much that's going to be. So I'm like, okay, so I put that in my back pocket. I'm not using it, but it's okay. If we have to, maybe we can count that. So I'm considering that.
Something like that could help the loan. Right.
Could help the loan. So the day, there's a day it was a holiday. Lots of people were going to parties with friends and family. I was one of them, and so was the listing agent. But the listing agent called me on the way and said, hey, this person put in an offer that was higher than the range that I had specified. Are they okay to do that? So I thought, oh, okay, well, let me go. So I'm at this party, and I have a little napkin, and I'm re-looking and making sure, checking everything. Sure. Some details that were ambiguous but didn't matter. Now they matter, and so now I'm trying to check it out.
Right.
And so as I'm figuring out, I also look at rates. Rates have increased a little bit too. So we're in the scenario where both the price and the rates have increased. And so it's real tight. Then I remember, of course, she has the raise coming. Now, she didn't know how much that was going to be. But even if it was the low end, loan's done easy, right? If it's the high end, it's even easier. But at any version of that, it would work. And if it was the gap between her old wage and new wage, if it was even a third of that or so, it would still work. So I said, you know what? Let's do it. She can do it. Sure. It'll work. So we do it. We're going through the loan process. Everything's going great. It's about a week before closing. And so I have that conversation of, okay, we're closing date is coming up. I want to go through that final conversation of what to expect, etc. I said, when are you available? And, she worked at night. So, during the day, I had to be careful about when to call. So I had to arrange that specific time. And so she said, oh, you can call me anytime during the day. I'm not working right now. And I said, oh, you took the day off? She said, no, I'm not working at all right now. I'm on strike.
Oh.
I was like, oh, okay. You're on strike right now. It's like, yeah. We're just, we didn't come to an agreement on the new contract. And so we're on strike until that happens. I'm like, okay, you're going to need to have a job to close the loan. So I had to call the other agents and say, hey, everything's going great. I think it's going to be okay. But she's on strike right now. So if they sign a new contract between now and closing, we're good. But if not, then we may have to delay closing. And I do remember just kind of a funny conversation with the selling side that said, well, how do we not know this? I'm like, they went on strike. And then said, can we do this, that, and the other? I'm like, they're on strike. You just have to wait until they're not on strike anymore. And so that was pretty wild. I learned a lot about the regulations involved. You can count the income that she got from her union temporarily, and she was getting paid an hourly wage to strike, but it wasn't enough to make it work. But thankfully, They came to a conclusion. They wrapped it up. I called the union head. I got him he was very perplexed and had no idea what I was talking about, but I got him to write a letter on letterhead, signing it, got all these union documents, blah, 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 blah. And we did close on time. And so she got that home. So that was pretty cool. But that was a big surprise. That was a new one. And I always like it when something like this happens and I ask colleagues about it. And they go, I don't know. Like if you can kind of stump somebody, that's always, that's kind of a fun one. But,
so you were like, I'm sorry, you're going to have to become a scab if you want to buy this home. Did you have that sort of conversation or?
No, not at all. It's like, no, I was the opposite. I was like, good for you. I was like, strike, get that wage. And then it's like,
for sure.
If anybody else can complain about it, then they can, they can just be patient. You know, you're fighting for a better wage. If we got to push back closing a week, it is what it is, you know. Right. And so, but luckily we didn't have to. So, but that was a new one for sure.
No, that's amazing. So, and you closed that loan on time. So the strike
it was on time.
Ended,
yeah.
And did they? I want to know for the borrower, did they get what they wanted in the strike?
Yes. Yeah. It was quite good. It was on the higher end of what they were talking about. Yeah.
Excellent. Excellent. So
yeah,
happiness all around for
sure.
For her home, for her at her job. Oh, this is a wonderful story.
Yeah. Oh, and by the way, all of this took place in California during the gold rush. I had to get the Western theme in there.
Yes,
so about that.
Exactly. Yeah, I was gonna say, wonderful for Maisie Bell Cartwright and her wild horses that she was wrangling. Awesome. All right, did you have?
I got another one.
Yeah, one more story for us. I would love to hear it.
Well, this one's pretty quick. It's the same sort of theme here. I was working with a gentleman. Again, this is another young person buying a house early in their life. I didn't do that on purpose. I didn't even make that connection when I was talking about it earlier, which is beautiful how that works. But he was buying a house, and he's getting close to closing. That's always when these surprises are at their best. And we're kind of trying to source the earnest money, which means, earnest money is the deposit that you put on a house. Of course, you want credit for that at closing so you don't have to pay it again. And so you have to show that coming out of your bank account. So I asked for updated bank statements so I can show that coming out. And he sends it to me cheerfully. He goes, here you go. And I'm looking at the bank statement, and right before the earnest money comes out, I see a deposit for $15,000, right? Oh. And so during I'm thinking back and thinking, did we talk about this at all? I sent him a quick text and say, what is this? And he said, oh, it's a gift from my mom. Okay. Thinking back to did I do it every time. I always make sure. And I did this time. I said, are you getting a gift from a family member or parent? I don't care who it is. I've helped people over the age of 60 buy houses. I still ask, you sure, never know.
Of course.
And he said, no gift for buying the house. This is all me. And then he just very plainly said that it was a gift. So I kind of give him a call and say, hey, I thought you weren't getting a gift for the house. And he said, oh, no. This isn't a gift for the house. I have a birthday, late in the year, and Christmas is also in December. And so instead of getting two separate gifts for those two things, each year I get $15,000 from my parents as a gift, a combined birthday and Christmas. And because I get it every year, I completely forgot that it was happening.
Wow.
Oh, okay.
Oh, wow.
And so I was nice. That must be nice. I mean, I didn't say it directly. Kind of acted like that was sort of normal, but I thought, sure. Wow. I mean, not only I don't mind any other part of that process. I thought the thing that was just so wild about that is, even after you say two things, are you going to get a gift to close this house? Right. And do you expect any deposits or withdrawals that are at least 1% of the loan value? And just at least get them thinking about that. And then if it's coming up, it happening. The whole time, the whole month up from, it never occurred to him that he was going to be getting a check for $15,000. And it was also, it happened like right before the earnest money came out. And so
Now,
then we had to back. Now, luckily, we just backed out the earnest money because when you're the kind of person that gets $15,000 randomly and forgets about it, you don't mind backing out the earnest money and getting a refund at closing. So
that was my next question. How did you handle that? Did the underwriter make you go document that 12 months prior he also got $15,000, and maybe 12 months prior to that he also got 15,000? So you just backed out the earnest money?
We just backed it out.
Okay,
that's
a solid.
Which is the
solution.
Yeah, and especially because of that particular person, that was something that he didn't necessarily care about, and at first was kind of a little. But then I said, well, I think your parents might have to turn over their bank statements and then sign a letter saying it was a gift when it wasn't, to a degree. And he said, let's just back it out.
Sure. Man, that's a wild ride. Okay, let me ask you this. So for someone that's buying their first home, because you do work with a lot of first-time home buyers. All right. So for someone that's buying their first home, especially right now, what's one piece of advice that you always try to give every first-time home buyer up front?
One thing is, definitely, trying as hard as possible to steer people away from like down payment assistance programs. And the reason why is that there are a few magical opportunities that genuinely are, here's some money to help with closing. It's yours. Just take it. The rate is good and everything else. 99.9% of the time, there's a drawback. And what, any lender or bank that is offering a down payment assistance program is, and I don't mean this in a malicious way, but it's kind of a shell game or redistribution of the burden of that cost is moved somewhere else in the loan. And usually what happens is it ends up being financed. So it isn't just moved somewhere else, it's also multiplied by financing. Either that, or it comes with a higher rate and they're making a lot more money in the long run because of that. So it's always better to put the money down. People don't want to do it. They want to have liquid cash. I totally get it. But it's, I have those programs available. I will tell you about those programs. And the rule of thumb for me always is, if you're in a situation where no matter what, you just can't save up money. A lot of times it's people with kids, multiple kids. There's too many random expenses keep popping up that if you don't have that money when you start having those kids, it's just so hard to build up that nest egg. And then just depending on the kind of career that they have, etc. It may just be a very long time before that money can get saved up. In that scenario, that makes sense because owning a home is so much is way better for you financially than renting. And especially in Indiana, where 1-to-1 a mortgage versus rent, you're going to get a bigger and better house for the same amount of money and then also build equity. It is a no-brainer in the state of Indiana to buy a home instead of rent if you are planning on being somewhere for a long period of time. So just trying to educate people about that and make sure that they're making a clear-eyed decision. I've won a lot of clients actually that came to me hoping for zero down programs, explained to them how that works, and then they appreciated that. It's something that have to fight people a little bit, but in the long term, when they fully understand that, they're very appreciative of being able to have that kind of advice and make a good decision. I also try to make sure that people understand, the rate thing. A lot of times people will talk about, well, rates are right now, should I wait a little bit? And, I totally understand. You want to get the best deal possible. Believe me, I, more than anybody else, understand. It takes me like 15 minutes to order a pizza because I have to look up every coupon. I have to look up what every, I will scrounge for every last cent if on any purchase that I make. And so I completely, understand that temptation to do that. But, if rates go up, then you'll be glad you bought right now. If rates stay the same, you will feel silly for having waited a year just to have the same. Which, by the way, if you were last year saying, "Oh, I'm not going to buy this summer," and you're back here, guess what? Rates are about the same, a little lower, about the same. Right. You wasted a year of rent for no reason, and then take that, because a lot of people haven't done this. Take the rent, multiply it by 12. You're going to throw all that away. Now, not all of that's going to turn into equity, but some of it is, and that's going to be better for you. But if rates go down, refinancing, and then educating about refinancing, I think that's something that seems a little scary to some people. There's a lot of people that have owned homes that have never refinanced, maybe because it didn't make sense. But sometimes it's just like, I don't want to go through it again, and I don't really fully understand how it works. And it is even for me sometimes just the flow of like how to transition from one to the other and how the money shifts around. It is a little complicated, and so I think people just don't want to kind of do that. But it does make a lot of sense. There's ways of doing it that help with both your cash flow short term and also are long term beneficial. But that's the secret key. If rates go down a lot, just refinance. Mm-hmm. I think that's the one major thing that makes it click for people to say, oh, that opportunity cost, if I would have waited a year and rates went down 2 points, well, this is easy refinance. I mean, we can even go up a couple notches in rate and then do it for free. So it would cost you no money whatsoever, then refi, and so that's what another major thing to understand. And then just also, what it does to your life financially. It's maybe a boring topic in a certain way, but one thing that a story that I always tell is that my wife and I didn't know anything about mortgages or real estate, and we bought a house like 8 years ago, and we had a couple of different big bumps in prices, and that's a major factor. But still, to this day, as we're recording this podcast, the equity that I built in the house exceeds the total amount of money I've paid in mortgage payments.
Right.
It's not going to happen for everybody.
Sure.
And especially people who bought maybe a couple years ago, they're trying to sell now. It's not the same sort of situation. But, if you look at the long-term trends of housing, it always goes up, and it has some stalls, and it kind of, you have to ride the wave a little bit. But, obviously, the fact that we've essentially had 8 years of free living, that's pretty darn compelling, and making sure that they truly understand that. And how that impacts their life, and how that hopefully it's such a crucial decision, they spend so much time thinking about what house they're going to buy, and then also what the mortgage is going to look like, and they put all that effort into it. Once they're in there, hopefully they can settle into letting that passively happen in the background. They keep paying it, and then life is crazy. All sorts of fun things happen to them. They have a new child, they get a promotion, blah, 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 blah. And there's more fun things than getting a promotion, having a child. But, they go through all that, and then they might need to make a major move, or maybe they think about buying a new house. And then all of a sudden, boom, there's this big pot of equity there that maybe they haven't even thought about that much. And then they have all this extra buying power that they didn't have before. It's really great to be able to do that. And it is so important for people to be able to realize that. I still think there's so many people that make sarcastic jokes about, how expensive housing is right now and how they can't afford it. Some of them can't. Man, I talk to some people that will say that, and they really can't. I mean, credit's usually the biggest factor there. But man, a lot of people that I talk to that will say that, you have the conversation. It's like, you could buy a house, you could put an offer in tonight easily. They have no idea. I mean, it's right. They don't know what they don't know. And, that's making sure that they are educated on that and understand that the buying power that they do have, and then the buying power they'll have long term, it changes lives. It makes things a lot different. If my wife and I had been renting this whole time, we wouldn't be in nearly the same financial position that we are now.
So how do we educate them? How do we get the message out? What are you doing right now to keep getting that message out to these people?
Honestly, that is somewhat of a puzzle that I'm still trying to figure out. I think that, the number one way is just talking to people, right? And just say, take a leap of faith, just talk to me for a little bit. I always try to say, I can't charge you until you buy a house. So don't worry about spending any money. Don't worry about wasting my time. I'm the one offering, and, just have that conversation one-on-one. Getting out and advertising that does become difficult to a degree, because I think that when people see real estate advertising, their eyes can kind of gloss over.
Yeah.
This is a fundamental rule of advertising, but if you have decided or suddenly become interested in something. There's this phenomenon where people think that all the devices in their house are listening to them. And the reason why is because they'll see an advertisement for something and they're like, I have never said anything about this. I've never spoken a word out loud of it. I've never typed it or anything. But all of a sudden, this thing I was thinking about buying, I see it everywhere. And like maybe I said it out loud once or something. And it's like, well, maybe. But also, you so many advertisements that have never meant anything to you. And then all of a sudden, if you need to redo your gutters, your eyes will, it's like being in the Matrix. You just took the red pill. And then all of a sudden, you'll see that there's gutter advertising everywhere. You'll be assaulted by it. And you're like, how did that happen? I was like, well, it's because it's always been there. It's just always glossed over your face. And so one problem from an advertising perspective is that I'd really like to get more people who don't know that they can afford a house, but that would really benefit from buying a house to understand that they can try. And that's so hard because, they have convinced themselves that they're not home buyers. And so advertising washes over them, right? And so being able to come up with messages that break through that to people, that's still something that I'm trying to crack a little bit. The number one way I've been able to do it is in the wild, so to speak, on the internet or something. If I see a meme like that and it's wrong, sometimes it's right.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of things that are not great about housing right now. And there's things that are not great about credit reporting bureaus right now. And they should be talked about. But when it's wrong,
call it out. Try
to step in and say, look, there's a lot of things that are messed up about housing right now, but this isn't one of them. And it's a little different than what you're thinking. And this is why. And anybody that would want to know maybe more about that, I'm open to a phone call about it. And I put that out there. A lot of times it's not, but I've gotten a few people that have called me up and, I had some old friends of mine who saw something like that on somebody else's page, took the leap, gave me a call. They had not been thinking about buying a house at all. They were about to renew a lease. And then, 2 months later, we got them in their dream home. And that was an amazing closing. And the sellers were so nice, and they're like the nicest people in the world. They're so awesome. And that was one of the better closings and one of my favorite closings. Not just because of all of that, but just because if I hadn't existed, they would not be in a house right now. Yeah. And it's not the most important thing in the world to do it, but like they're going to have a better life because of that. And they were so grateful to be able to have that opportunity to be able to do that was really rewarding to be able to do. So, but we need more. I mean, I'm still trying to figure that out and, how to, craft that messaging. And I think that social media can help a lot. But one thing I learned from, the podcast that you mentioned, breaking through with social media presence and, figuring out, we were on social media for a while. And it was maybe a year and a half or so where there was maybe a little bit, but not a lot. And then just one day we just figured it out. And I can't even tell you exactly what it was. But we just found the voice, like how to tweet about it, how to put content out there, so to speak, that resonated and that effectively communicated our message and got people to follow us and engage with us. It takes a while to hone that. And just to be completely honest with you, I don't think I figured that out yet for mortgages, and I would really like to. The only way to do that is to produce stuff and put it out there and see what works and what doesn't. But sometimes I struggle with it a little bit because part of the conceit of this podcast, right, is that when you're telling a story, you make details of the Old West, which is a little silly and a little fun.
Sure.
But the reason why you have to do that is because you can't.
Right.
You can't just talk openly about certain elements of a loan or the loan process because you're forbidden by law. And you can't go out there and say that brokers in general, I even now I'm trying to pick my words, like they can have better rates, they can have better fees. The actual reality of that is a lot more stark, but you can't advertise the truth, so to speak, about that. And, there's a lot of back and forth about that. And even as brokers, if there's one lender that is a little bit superior to another in service, but is slightly more in price than another, then we have to be careful about how we present our options.
Of course.
There are some lenders that I never want to work with again, just because, the process wasn't super great. Like, how do you communicate that to your buyers? If, there's just so many things that you have to kind of be careful about that. And then just makes it hard to grab a megaphone and blast that out there and then let people know. I think that people are used to having, we talked about like in business meetings where you might become a different person than you actually are. And you might talk in a certain way and treat another person in a different way than you would if they were in real life. I think that there's a problem with that with real estate advertising as well, sometimes, where the look and feel of it and the things that they say, you kind of get transported into like a certain mind frame. Like I'm now watching a real estate advertisement, and it's supposed to look a certain way, and it's supposed to say certain things, and breaking through that is hard, because if you do it in a really effective way, it could be very powerful. But if you do it in the wrong way, then it can seem unprofessional and serious. And so there's a lot of risk in putting out messages that are a little unconventional in order to break through the noise and get to people. Just trying to find that balance is tough, because like you said, this is the biggest purchase that a lot of people will ever make. And so they're very kind of nervous about that. And so I think it's tempting for people maybe to say, do I want to go with someone that doesn't advertise heavily? I've honestly never really heard of the company before. Or do I want to go with the company whose name I see plastered on billboards and naming stadiums or amphitheaters, and that is right off the top of my head? What's going to make me feel more comfortable? I can understand that temptation. I can understand that worry, and breaking through that could be hard. The number one way to do it is just to talk to somebody. Yeah. If I got in front of somebody and had that conversation, then it's over. But like getting to that point and like being able to do that, every once in a while, you'll talk to somebody on the phone and they'll be extremely guarded they won't even want to talk on the phone.
Yeah.
And then they might send you an email that says like, just send me your rates. I'm like, well, let's like, I'm sorry. Like, I'm not trying. I understand how it can seem frustrating if I say, I can't just do that. But like, I literally can't. That's not how it works. There's a lot more to it. And like, we should talk about it a little bit. And I've had a few people just say no. And maybe give them a call and they don't want to talk on the phone. And like, just send me an email with your rates, and that's it. I had a buyer once where we sent just flat rates. I couldn't get them to talk on the phone in detail. I couldn't, so I sent them a few options, and then, they ended up going with kind of somebody else because they got pricing from them initially, kind of came to me, took my pricing to them. They went a little lower, and then that was it. And then I just remember they said, we're done. This is it's a lot of frustrating experience. It's a big high stakes thing. We just want to be settled and done and go forward and be good with this. I'm like, okay, cool. But if you came back, then we could have done better for a variety of different reasons. And then later on in the loan process, I said, rates went down a lot, and said, hey, you can still go somewhere else and get a much better rate. And they said, well, let me think about it. And then it got to a certain breaking point where it wasn't available anymore. And they even told me like, man, we wish we would have just done that. Yeah. I wish we would have switched. And it's like, if we had been working together from the beginning, then you could have switched with no problem. And then also, I didn't say this directly, but it's like, if you would just jump on the phone, or if we just had like a real conversation as human beings, then I think you would have understood that a lot better. And they kind of, I finally did have a good conversation with them. And they said, well, I think that if I know someone else is buying a home, I'm going to, have them talk to you. I'm like, well, cool. But like, we built a society a lot of times, especially with salespeople, where they will be very high pressure. They won't think about what the person needs. They will think about what products they have that are the highest profit margin, or the things that they have a sales incentive that they have to move a certain thing. And they're more concerned with kind of pushing that than they are meeting a person's needs and serving in their best interest. And there's just so much of that in the world in so many different respects. And so I get the hesitation And I understand that. And that's another problem to solve as well. It's just make sure that it's not salesy, make sure that you're not pushing something on a buyer that isn't in their best interest. It's a higher rate and higher fees just because they kind of have to be. There's a reason why some of those companies advertise so heavily. It's because it works.
Right.
And I get why it works, but how do you thread the needle between, if I go out and spend a tremendous amount of money on advertising, even if I find that super effective method, eventually I'm going to have to raise the price of working with me, right? Because then you have to cover that expense. And then that's, one reason why places that advertise very heavily generally have higher rates and higher fees is because they have to make up for that. So that's a whole big balance, and it's a whole big puzzle that I'm still trying to solve. I'm open to ideas if anybody has any good ideas of how to get that done, but you just try to get out as much as possible. Just try to talk to as many people as possible. And unfortunately, at least for me right now, I haven't figured out a good way to do that without, just talking to someone for an initial conversation that was planned for 10, 15 minutes that usually turns into 45 minutes to an hour, and answering everybody's questions and making them feel comfortable. It's really by far, in a way, the number one way to get that message out.
Well, Dave, that's why you're the most interesting man in the mortgage business, because you bring this sort of thought process to every conversation. You bring this sort of thought process to the Steadfast Mortgage team. You bring this sort of thought process to everything you do. If someone's listening to this and they're thinking, man, I love listening to Dave today, I want this guy on my side, what's the best way for that person to connect with you?
Give me a call. I mean, I have a little bit of presence on, Facebook and Twitter. I basically, on Twitter, I only speak about the Pacers, the occasional movie take, or bad joke. I think I've given up on the bad jokes. Facebook would be one, or, really, like I said, best way to give me a call. I don't even have to talk to you about, you don't even have to be buying a home right now. You just got a couple of questions about the home buying process. I'm more than happy to do it. And I've had so many conversations with people that never led to them buying a home. That's fine. That's totally fine. It's like, I have this knowledge and this expertise. I'm able to give it out for free because of the business model that I have. So it's delightful to be able to talk to someone for 30 minutes, answer a bunch of questions, and they have no plans whatsoever to buy a home. That's awesome. I love doing it. So, give me a call.
What's your handle on Twitter?
Miller Time Pod.
Miller Time Pod. Dave, what's the little title? Or it's at Miller Time Pod, and it's Dave Searle. Does it say mortgages in there now? I can't remember.
Oh, what's the name? Yeah. Yes, I put my my nickname, which you don't, but on Twitter, the name shows as Dave Mortgages. That's Searle, right. Which Dave is the most, it's completely inelegant. And I actually had a friend of mine who worked, I helped him buy a condo, and he also he was the managing editor at Nuvo, which is a newspaper that I worked at, Arts and Entertainment magazine that I worked at for a long time. And he sent me a message that said, "Hey, I saw the new handle. That's very un-Dave-like." And it's like, putting that mortgage thing so front and center, especially on something that had nothing to do with it. And then all I responded with to him with was money over everything. Like, I have to, I built a fairly decent audience on Twitter, and like that, it's like, that's, what, I spent a lot of time and energy building that up. And so, what, I'm throwing mortgages in the handle. If it looks tacky and bad, it just sort of is what it is.
There we go. Miller Time Pod on Twitter. Dave Mortgages Searle on Twitter. If you want to get his phone number, you can find that on our website, Steadfast Mortgage Team online. Dave said, give him a call. He's wonderful to talk to, as you could tell, just listening to us here on the podcast today. Dave, thank you again so much for your time, being here to join me on Closing Time with the Lone Rangers. I was not riding solo today because I had you as my fellow Lone Ranger. Honestly, these stories today, this conversation, just was really, really wonderful for me to listen to you. So every week we're going to try to have people like you that are, good people to talk to in this industry. Loan officers, real estate agents, title agents, all kind of characters from the mortgage world to share not always ridiculous things, sometimes just like feel good stories like you shared today that actually happened at the closing table. So if you enjoyed today's episode, please make sure to like, subscribe, share it with someone in the industry, leave us a review. Until next time, I'm Jonathan Washburn, and this has been Closing Time with the Lone Rangers, where the only thing crazier than interest rates is the stories.